Yeah, we can.
Yeah, there were a couple places to check out.
Yeah. Thanks.
Are you warm? Julie, are you warm? So see, she's very warm.
She has a fan on, it's just hard to hear, that's all.
Yeah.
We had the fan on earlier, but then when you have meetings, it's really hard to hear over here, so we usually turn it off.
So Claudia we still have an opening, and Mike's the 6th, right? Yeah.
For now.
2 minutes, Jim.
Yeah.
How's young Suzanne?
Um,
Delightful as always?
yes, staying healthy, but running about 120 miles an hour.
To pull that off financially.
Yeah.
Did you say he was gonna be here, Jennifer? I did not hear from him.
But the messaging will be then around the electronic version in 2022, right?
Yes, let me call this to order. We're 1 o'clock, and before we get into the agenda, we've got 2 things. You've received one handout that has to do with the notice deadline, October. They have made a change, as you'll see it highlighted. They didn't indicate postage deadlines, but indicated it has to be received by October 1, at 5 p.m. And then there's one notation about 3 pages in about acknowledging that at the time of their event, COVID restrictions may be in place and would be met as part of their planning.
Good.
So with those in order, this has not been posted yet, but it's about to go out if this is, if there are no other changes that we think need to happen to it. Go ahead, Steve.
I was just gonna ask if it's gone out.
Jennifer, why was under application criteria, why is it highlighted, applications must be completed and received by the deadline advertised? Was there something?
I took out the postmark.
Oh, that's where that was?
Yeah,
Oh,
that's
okay.
that postmark I highlighted.
Okay.
We wanted to have them by the 1st, but get them quickly enough to you.
Mm-hmm.
And the mail lately has been really slow.
Yeah, okay.
So we just,
Yeah. Thank you, Jennifer. That makes sense.
Okay.
I like it.
No objections to posting this? Give them a go-ahead and get it out? Bruce, you're on.
Yes, sir, thank you. Maybe if we start, if everybody can kind of identify themselves, so is there anybody on
is anybody on the meeting?
Rusty.
are you the only one on?
Okay, so you want us to go around?
Yeah, why not?
For the record?
It'll be on the recording too.
Okay, Julie Walker?
Jim Kingwell?
Greg Bell.
Greg Swedenborg?
Steve Sinclair?
Just missing, Mike
Yeah.
Morgan.
Okay, the, essential running schedule, based on the discussion we had, I think it was on July 20th, everybody in agreement with that?
Yep.
And the reason I kind of had a question mark on August 20th is that's now the normal day for council to meet, so we may move it a day or two. So that one, I would say is not cast in stone yet. But we will notice all those other meetings. Next thing, we, actually, I guess this is good news. when we did our budget and we came up with $292,000, for the annual, we did zero quarter four, but in fact, the quarter four came in at $50,669. So, if everything stays the same, that bodes well. If we have a little bit of more of a hiccup, then this will help bolster, maybe, ease that, but it is nice, over $50,000. And that number is, based on what was collected as of Friday, and there are 10 hotels and 62 short-term rentals that are not filed yet. So it could be, a little bit more. And then, the next thing, and I know that, Jim, you keep cautioning everybody as far as the potential deferrals. So far, there's not been anybody that has asked for a deferral for quarterly audit.
Good.
So whatever we get, we should get. Thank you.
Just have one question, what date did you say?
August 20th. October 20th.
October 20th.
Yes.
October.
Yeah, that's the one where you're gonna have the joint meeting.
Yep.
with the council.
Right, I just,
Make the recommendation.
Thanks, Bruce. I was in the wrong month.
That's all.
To be
Yeah, there we go.
I thought you said August for some reason.
I thought.
Yeah, I did too. So we're good.
Okay, our focus here today will be on bringing up any issues to make recommendations for policy consideration changes to council. This could involve a ton of discussion, so, if there are points, I'd like to try to get them stated concisely as possible and give people chances to react, because there could be, who knows how many points to raise about this to call to the attention of.
I'm sorry, can I interrupt one more time? Jennifer, was this posted as the board meeting?
Yes.
Okay, just for the record, that you folks have the opportunity today to vote on any of these recommended changes, and we have put this subject on the workshop agenda for the 11th.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
cool.
Can I say that I think that we were gonna talk about 3 specific things? Remind me if I'm wrong.
Let's start with that.
Let's start with that. Why don't you bring up the 3?
Well, this is what I remember, so I'll just, my brain isn't exactly what it used to be, and it's sorry. One was the issue that Greg had brought up about the other 1% and any future 1%, and asking council, should all that go through this meeting? I mean, not this meeting,
Sure.
this committee, if
Yep.
I'm saying that right.
Yes.
The other issue was the possible skewing of the numbers, by having someone be able to vote more dollars than somebody asked for. I don't know a concise way to say that, but that was an issue.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other one, which I see may have already been addressed by removal from office on the second page here. That I just brought up about people not attending the actual meeting.
Right.
I think it's not misconduct, but absentee for 3 meetings in a calendar year without approved excuse. So I guess we just have to talk about what an approved excuse is. But those are the 3 things I remember. Is there anything else that should be discussed?
That one.
Well, and I was just mentioning to Greg, and I think it falls under the first one of the other 1%
All the other 1%?
But it falls under, my idea of it is falls under the purpose of the committee, in that there are, the example of the bandstand with the power upgrade is a perfect example. I think I would like to see this committee focus on some more things like that are beneficial to tourism and community, and didn't want to go into this year just being like, let's get a list of festivals and improve them and so forth, but let's see if we can really look at other things that might not be the focus of this committee in the past, but still, something that we can approve under OSR 320 and the rules of how these funds are used.
It's sort of looking at, like, instead of just events that happen, looking at how, instead of focusing on dragging people here, how can we focus on the actual product of our town? Our town is the product, and maybe we certainly don't want any more here in the summer, but how do you improve the product to make it more attractive, particularly in the off-season, but also, if you can't drag people here because we have a pandemic, then maybe we can work on the product, so we have something to talk about when the pandemic is over. Because that's what the bandstand was, it was working on the trails.
Yeah.
All of that's the product, not necessarily an event.
I agree, and I've been on this committee for 2 years now, and it seems like when we talk about the trails or the bandstand, we kind of like have this discussion, well, that could work under the rules, that couldn't, and we defer back to the charter and so forth, and I think maybe changing that charter a little bit to say that it's okay to work on the product it might be a direction to go.
I think that should be separated from the issue of the 1%, just for ease of isolating that discussion, because I think it's got real legs when we start seeing the potential, creating a greater potential for future options. But I think we're gonna get involved with the multiple percentages, possibly on a whole different line of discussion that I'd hate to see that get lost in. So I think we should present it as, 4 points.
Okay.
So as a data point to Greg's suggestion, Bruce, I'd asked him before the meeting started, in the charter it says you have to have a 501 or a 503C, you have to be associated with a nonprofit to put an application in to use PAC funds. The electrical upgrade on the stand was one of those examples, like it was something we thought was a good idea. It'd be nice if this committee could put forth ideas for a project to improve the product without having to go through the whole, we have to go out and find an animal shelter, and we got a partner, and we got to do the thing, and that's just data point. That's a data point on the same topic.
I mean, the other issue about that is if you can't, because the purpose of our committee might be harder to change since that was thought through a long time ago.
Oh.
But I would argue that perhaps the chamber should have that as an option, as a part of their charter, because I see there's a lot of complaining about chambers doing all this advertising and dragging people here in the summer. If they change their charter to be more about working on the product than necessarily working on just dragging people here, that might be interesting. In case if we can't change the purpose, it might be something to deal with from the chambers, that they can come and pitch us for money to work on the product, rather than necessarily, they're not gonna ask us for advertising this year, it looks like, but, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
If that makes any sense.
And we've kind of done that a little bit with things that are not events, video production, the Fuji trails and so forth. It just seems that they're kind of a one-off, and especially in a pandemic year, I don't think our focus should be on, hey, let's throw a big get-together.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's rebuild reserves and work on the product.
Can't work on the product. Bless you. So how do you want to go with all that, Jim? Guess you get 4 points.
Yeah, I think that does raise the issue because the charter makes them, qualified recipients of funds without the need to go, to try to change the need for a 501c3. That was set in really to enable procedures so we didn't have to go through outright, bidding and great time savings.
Yep.
And I think it's unique to the city to have that. I think it simplifies it, but if the chamber has a non-profit organization, cooperation with them, separate from their DMO contracts, makes good sense. And I'd like to consider that different from, once again, the other 1% or future 1%, partly because it is a different thing. When I go back to the first issue raised of whether or not we should be overseeing and looking into the other 1%, we're going to get into very complicated territory, partly because the original charter for this committee indicates we were established to deal with the 1% lodging tax from a specific action on July 1st in 2010. That's the only one named at this point. The scale of our work radically expands, if we have to get involved with all of the issues dealing with the other lodging taxes, and they start overlapping into politics, because there are designated usages that are set now into council policy, where they're looking for those things to fund particular things that were decided on a political basis. And since none of us are actually elected people, it'll raise the other question of accountability. If we try to start looking after or trying to administer the 1% that comes from the county, and the other 1% lodging tax that the city issued to give us, 3% of the lodging tax, all of a sudden our scale gives us, I don't know what percentage of the general fund budget to be handled by an appointed committee. And I think that would complicate both our accountability issues and might even affect the ability to recruit people for the committee.
But don't you think that we don't decide, it all goes to council?
Make a
Correct.
recommendation.
It does.
And council is elected, and all we're doing is making recommendations, and they can say, screw you, we don't wanna do any of it.
That's right.
I agree that the scale gets a lot larger, and this
Yep.
committee becomes probably more involved than any of us originally signed up for, but the reason I like the idea is, I hate the fact that somebody's doing 1% over here, and somebody's
Yep.
doing 1% over here, and 1% over here, and we were recruited specifically for either arts or marketing or both knowledge. Why isn't it all being overseen by one thing, who can see the 10,000-foot level of everything, rather than just, well, here's my little portion, and I'm gonna do this, well, the chamber's over here doing this, and somebody else is over here doing this, and they're all overlapping and getting in each other's way, and we're not being efficient with how we're spending the money.
So I agree with that 100%.
What you just said.
I think if you take that 10,000-foot level look, you see that, it's roughly $400,000 in 3 different chunks, so $1.2 million.
Yeah.
A third of that, and I don't know if this has been an ordinance or whatever, but is gonna buy the school. And so that's kind of the side of you look at the other two, that go to the DMO and this committee, we spend a lot in advertising.
Yeah.
A ton, and there's overlap and inefficiencies there, and as a committee, if we were overseeing that, we could say, hey, there is, some efficiencies to be gained here, or why are we double spending here, and things like that. I don't think there's any oversight to that right now.
And there's none. And my argument, back when this came up with the second 1% that happened, was like, why isn't this being overseen by us? It's like, well, the chamber will oversee it. And it's like, that we were brought on to be the marketing people to ask the chamber the tough questions. If we don't ask the chamber the tough questions, who on the city council is gonna ask tough questions? Nobody. None of them have marketing experience. That's why you recruited us. And they're like, oh, no, it's different money. It doesn't matter. It's like, okay, so there's no accountability for what happens at the chamber, other than the chamber board, which may or may not have marketing experience. So it just seems silly to me to have oversight by being 3 different places. I don't know. I love the idea.
I agree.
I'm on record for that, whatever it was, 6 years ago.
And I don't know exactly how it works, but there could be years where, the funds from one help out in another, and you treat it as one big tourism arts fund,
Right.
as opposed to 3 spigots. I don't know, that's just, and the reason I asked to have this discussion in policies is because every meeting, it seems like we talk about the event, how the event did, and then we adjourn.
Is that a dogfight, those other 1%? Is there someone who's gonna care about that not getting yanked away from them?
It wasn't yanked away. I think
Like if it came under us?
the issue was, when the second 1% came up,
Yeah.
the idea was, give the 70% to the chamber so that they can expand their thing. And I asked the question, why isn't the chamber reporting to this committee so that we can ask tough questions about how are you gonna spend it? Oh, no.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter, they're gonna report to us, and they had some big agreement with the chamber, and it's like, you still don't have one dang marketing person on this city council. I guess Wendy was a marketing person, sort of. but there was nobody to ask any tough questions, and there were no reports that I saw that specified, this is what we spent on advertising and this is what the advertising was. For instance, that's the one that was the bug in my craw, because I thought they spent a lot of money stupidly. And, at the time, this was a few
Years ago, yeah.
And I just thought, well, there's nobody looking at this, and the city council read it and went, oh, that seems fine to me, and just rubber stamped it. It's like, there's no accountability for whatever it was, $450,000, just gone. So, anyway, is any of that even possible, Bruce? To have it run through?
I don't know. I wouldn't imagine that the chamber would jump at the opportunity to have somebody else control the money, now that you have the contract.
That's why I asked my question.
And then the
But
other.
we're not controlling it. All they're doing is answering to us, and then we give the recommendation to the city council.
Okay, I understand.
Am I wrong? Am I seeing it wrong? We don't stamp anything, it's like, yes, you're gonna get that money, we recommend to council, this is what we see, you guys go and decide.
Well, right now, they have a contract with the city,
Gotcha, okay.
so, I mean, they would have to agree to make that change. The other 1% is the one we get from the county, and that one right now is, kind of penciled in for the school.
Yeah.
We don't know what we're going to do, we don't know how we're gonna fund it, we don't know if we're gonna do it pay as you go, or bond, or whatever. So that one, I would probably say, that I would be one that would say, I don't know if I wanna, have somebody else control those until we know what it is we're gonna do. Because right now, we took in enough money to buy the school, and we had to take out a loan to do that. So right now, we don't have any money to do any work. And so, we're kind of relying on that to be able to do something.
So, but in that example, and I get it, that we don't know what we're going to do, but now the city owns the school, and we're going to want to have someone manage the event center, or do all the operational stuff that you're gonna have to do, and that money is going to come from that fund. And either the city staff do something with that, or it goes through a committee like this that says, hey,
What's the plan?
what's the plan, yeah, and how you're gonna spend it, and, because, I mean, there's, as a citizen outside looking in, I saw all the great ideas, and I like it personally, of buying the school and keeping the land as it, but I've seen zero on operational, what we're gonna do, and what we're gonna spend. And when it gets time to implement that, there should be some, either city staff or city committee, kind of on the forefront of that, and I think the Tourism Arts Commission is kind of set up to be that. It would make sense to be that.
So right now, it would only be the budget committee weighing in, but do they have the expertise to make the decision of what should appropriately be spent on something? We know there's a policy dedication of those funds, and it may be right that the overview of the marketing expertise is gonna be needed, along with the other perspectives. We know that negotiations get involved, between the chamber and the city, and with this project coming up, there's gonna be a lot of both legal questions and budget considerations that are gonna come into play. So our homework will definitely increase if we've got responsibilities in that area to keep up with. The city legal fund or legal counsel would, of course, be weighing in to help give us guidance if we do in fact, offer recommendations there.
Plus, the council has to make a decision on how we're going to make decisions.
Yeah,
As far as, like we already have one plan, other people are proposing other things, and there's also, the part that I'm most involved with, and that's that, we've got infrastructure and buildings and things and systems that need to be in place one way or the other in order to make these dreams, real. So, there's that part too, study right now, to, I think I mentioned this, but just essentially to find out what it would cost to put the bone sack in. In other words, to have, running water, to have handicap restrooms, any seismic adjustments that have to be made, new envelope, building envelope, all those kinds of things. We got an engineering company, looking at all that. So that's just to give an idea of what it costs before we say, okay, in the gym, you'll be able to do X, Y, Z, and we'll plant these plants and all that.
How long is the contract with the chamber, Bruce? Do you know how long that's in place for, when it expires?
So we don't have a deadline on it. It's set up, is it 90 days, Greg?
Yeah, I think it's 3 months, yep.
Yeah, it's like.
It renewals.
Yeah, we bring, if there's an issue on one part, we bring it to the council and the board, and there's 3 months to resolve it, and then at the end, one of the parties can cancel.
Just thinking this idea of us managing the 3%, maybe that's the next fiscal year recommendation to the council, because we've got the school thing going on.
Yeah.
Contract with the chamber. We decide that's a good idea, maybe it's next year deal.
And I kind of get that the school thing probably doesn't make sense until it's
Done.
an up and running thing.
Right, yeah,
There's a lot of things, I mean, to me,
yep.
if there's a large scale with this, or a big scope, and I hope there would be, because to me it's a legacy project, that if we're gonna do it, there's ways to finance it.
Mhm.
And so, I think staff has the appropriate ones, and possibly, we could go out to, for a referral or something, in order to make those kind of things happen, but, I kind of see staff as being the ones that are sitting next to the council saying, these are your options, as opposed to working to a separate committee.
Although I could see the committee recommending that a portion of all the funds coming in to finance whatever engineering projects, infrastructure gets built, be set aside to start building a reserve for promotion of events. I could even see, a set aside of, 3-4% or something.
Yeah, I think there's gonna be two events. The first will be when we try to go ahead and like seal up the building and get the power on, those kind of things. And so we'll spend the money so that it's ready to do something. And then it'll be, okay, what do you wanna do? Do you wanna make it a museum? Do you wanna make it a gathering place? Do we wanna do anything with the classrooms?
Really, I thought they were a loss.
Looks like a tear down.
No, I went through, gone through several times, and, they haven't taken anybody through, but there's very little, water stains on the ceiling, there's no wet carpet, there's no smell,
Wow.
and there's 4,000 square foot rooms, all with individual doors, so, I think there's some opportunities there, I think those have been written off.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, so we're doing a study on what it would cost to
Wow.
bring it in, so.
There's your yoga festival, there's your.
There's a lot of potential, I'm not saying we should use them, but, in my mind, they're not written off. And actually, jumping ahead a little bit, we're talking about using this and paying for it with, $1 trillion, and one of the uses is for, like, hotels for gatherings and meeting spaces, those are some crazy good meeting spaces.
Yeah.
And then also be available for other people.
Desperately.
So, it depends on what people decide, but I think that the, palette is a little bigger than we know.
I can definitely say us saying that this committee wouldn't get involved with that until there's something to promote.
Yeah.
So I get that you guys really know better about building and getting it set and all that stuff makes sense for sure for now. Once it's up and going, then maybe we would have an opinion, this committee would have an opinion on it.
Is
My
that the-
prediction is it'll take longer to make the decision on how we're gonna make the decision than it will take to make the improvement.
Yep, probably.
So the recommendation on this point we would want to make is that at some time, this committee should be overseeing the direction of marketing funding when that project reaches a certain level of completion.
Right.
I think we should consider doing that. That makes sense to you?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I'm envisioning, is that this committee has some oversight of the decisions that are made on things like that. also for the second one, the 2018 ordinance, which is the chamber DMO project, and, you know, for the record, I'm on the chamber board, so, and was involved in all those, discussions. But, you know, having some oversight, so when we renegotiated the contract with the city, and the chamber did, and absorbed the cost of the visitor center in that 400,000, or 70% of that 1%, then there was a reduction in actual spend on advertising, and where did that money go?
Right.
I mean, I don't know, and I'm involved with it. So as we build up reserves and things like that, that's, you know, we have 70% things that we should be overseeing in my mind, as a committee that oversees tourism funds.
Are you okay with the third one, the county one being left to Bruce and his staff to deal with until we have a building that we can do something with?
Well, I mean, it's not my call to make. I think as a committee, we should know how that's being spent. Oh, we're gonna build, you know, remodel the classrooms. Great. You know, that's good use of that meeting, because the end goal is to have a meeting gathering place, you know, thing. That's great. And so, like what you just said, in my mind, you know, once it gets operational and someone has to, you know, report to how it's used, which is kind of like in Seaside how it works, that the folks that run the convention center report back, except there it's the city staff.
Yeah.
And not a tourism committee that oversees it. So, yeah, I just think the committee would have to, like, be aware, this is what's going on with the funds, how it's being used, can defend to that, and have oversight to that, if questioned about it. And ultimately, as a committee, we'd have no say, it all goes through the city council.
Right, yeah, right.
But the charter of being on this committee and having the background in the various, you know, businesses and experiences lends itself to that, I believe, more than someone who does not have that, or is not a collective body.
Yeah, I agree with that. And you're okay with that, for the chamber portion as well?
Yeah, I mean, I have 11 more months in my role as a volunteer at the chamber, and after that, if I'm not part of it, as a community member, I would want to know, are they doing a good job? You know, could it be done better in-house or by somebody else? And, you know, for example, I use this reference all the time, so I'm sorry if it gets old, but the city of Bend pays a company, a marketing company called Visit Bend, that markets themselves as Visit Bend, $3 million a year to do what we do for $250,000 in Cannon Beach. And they're under a lot of heat right now, because too many visitors, COVID, and all of that, and how are they justifying that $3 million? I would love to be on the city committee that looks into that and said, how are you spending it?
Right.
In the flip side of Cannon Beach and being involved with that, I think a lot of people are saying, oh, the chamber's getting all this money, don't realize how little they're actually doing and spending and promoting compared to other cities that collect as much as we do. I mean, Newport and Central Oregon Coast have TV ads and things like that. We don't do any of that. So I think a committee like this, seeing the big picture of that, that's why I think it's important.
I agree. So what do we actually say to city council?
Well, there are two aspects to the relationship. One is the city itself actually negotiating the contract, and us overseeing the way it's carried out. I don't think we've got a role in negotiating that contract.
No.
But in terms of accountability, there could be a role for us.
So in that contract, the way it is, and, you know, in this case, it's the chamber comes to the city and says, hey, this is what we did with the money, this is how we spent it.
Yeah.
They pretty much talk with Bruce. All I'm saying is, if we had accountability to that entity, whether it be the chamber or some third party, would be coming to this committee and saying, hey, this is how we spent the lodging or the TLT.
Yeah.
Because you guys are supposed to be in charge of how that's spent, or at least the oversight of it. And we ask the hard questions.
Yep.
I don't see us negotiating contracts, I don't see us doing that, maybe talking to Bruce and saying, hey, that needs a little more of this, or a little light on that. But, so when I envision the TAC committee overseeing the 70%, that's to the degree that I kind of see it in my head, not to do the work.
Right.
But oversight.
Primarily oversight.
Yeah.
I don't know the language of the contract between the city and the chamber, but it may be broad enough that the city just tells the chamber, the next time is reporting time, set it up and report to TAP.
That's possible.
Right now, it's set up, it's changed, of course, the code a bit, that, the chamber board is supposed to meet with the council quarterly for that same purpose.
And they do that?
No,
The whole board comes here?
no, we never got to that point.
Oh.
So the new contract language took effect, but it hasn't actually been implemented due to COVID. Is that what I'm hearing?
No, prior to that, I'm trying to remember, we were closing out a different year.
Okay.
Like the contract went in, but the conditions were different, and, then we were trying to schedule on some other, but the meetings did not, the meetings at the staff level occurred, but did not occur with the council.
And how long ago has that contract been in effect?
I don't know, at least it was probably last summer sometime.
So it's been about a year.
Oh.
And
Huh.
the council has not heard a report from the chamber about how they spent their money. There's been no accountability for how they spent that money yet.
Other than conversations that Jim and I have had, we need to have more than what we've had.
Whew. Yeah.
So,
It sounds like the chamber is reporting to Bruce, maybe not the,
Instead of council,
right.
right.
But the idea was.
We're still reporting to the city.
Yeah, but we would need, the idea was that we wouldn't get far afield by having the boards meet, and that has not been able to be pulled together.
That's a lot of people to pull together.
Yep.
so we've identified something that needs fixing. And we're gonna make a recommendation on how to fix that. If the communication is not happening at that matches what the intent of establishing it was, do we think we can fix that by having them report to this committee? Is
I do.
that the change?
Step one. And then the other percent, the county one that's handling the school, at some point, that'll become an operational consideration for us, maybe.
Okay.
It's like 2 steps.
It seems like the city council would appreciate that, because it takes something off of their calendar.
You would think.
Uh-huh.
Wow.
I mean, ultimately, it ends up on the calendar,
Yeah.
with a recommendation, I would hope. I mean, that's the point.
Been
of-
vetted.
Right.
Embedded.
It's been vetted.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
Which is the whole reason we were put in place in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
And to Steve's point, one of the problems that we've had is scheduling that meeting, because it's 2 boards, it rises to different levels than just a presentation and a workshop. And so, if we had a full workshop, it was, well, it's like, opposed to, afternoon meetings or something, so just getting them together became a logistical problem.
So I would see that it's probably the chamber board president and Jim, and maybe a member staff person who Jim wants to come and present to us, is the way I would envision that. So you don't have to get whatever, there are 9 board members now, I mean,
Good God.
how on earth are you gonna pull together
Yeah,
that?
and I don't think the intent was ever to get everybody
Right,
under
yeah.
one, but the idea was that
Representation.
the chamber is reporting back.
Right,
And,
right.
I don't want this to become about the chamber and all that, that's just one one component of it.
Yes, exactly.
But I think this committee, instead of saying, hey, you did a good festival and you brought heads in beds,
Yes.
should really have a little more focus on how was that, transient lodging tax money spent?
All of it.
Where did it go? And the big picture across festivals and
So,
advertising and operational of the new school when it's up and running.
Yep.
And someday there'll be a fourth stream, and how is that gonna get spent?
Sure.
Exactly.
So,
just don't see a downside, I think
So-
it's a benefit.
when this was put together in 2010, the other streams didn't exist.
Right, exactly.
So,
Right.
so rewording it to say, hey, this committee kinda has, not control, but oversight of these different,
For all
and-
TLT income.
I think that's the place where I'd like to see it get to,
Yeah,
you know?
I agree.
that's our goal, Jim, I just don't know how many steps it takes to get
How
there.
you word that, I don't know.
So, that's the recommendation to council. This is actually pretty good, what you just did.
Yeah, I think.
Needs to be brief for council.
Jennifer put it
Yeah.
on tape, well, Chris Worth just put that in.
You know, like, for example, the 2015 ordinance, which is the one for the DMO, if you read the ordinance, the line item, 30% of the loan spent would be collected and maintained in a fund to be designated by a line item in the Cannon Beach budget. What is that? And,
Preaching to the choir.
yeah,
Yep. I totally thought we should oversee that one.
Well, that's the recommendation. Okay. Figure out how to work it.
Do we need to vote on that?
Okay.
Because we're in agreement on this?
Probably,
Yeah, you can't,
we,
I think, you know, when I'm looking at just these three, and you did say everything else was on the table, but these three items were brought up, I think that it's possible to get an agreement from council on the other two, so that maybe they would vote on that on September 1st, because we wanted to have certain things in place for October. This one, I think, is not likely to get resolved on next Tuesday.
Right.
right.
So, but the other two, if you're talking about recommending procedures or whatever, I think you should vote.
Okay, so this one is gonna be a recommendation, but we don't,
We don't need to
I
vote.
think we're all in agreement.
We're in agreement, yeah.
that This is not gonna be something we're gonna vote for and present, and we're gonna get resolved next Tuesday.
Right.
I understand that, I think it's a bigger issue, I get
Yeah.
that.
this is a long-term.
That's why I think it's like next fiscal year probably, by
Right.
the time we get this resolved.
And also, you can, I mean, a way to couch it is that, you know, you think that this is something that should be, a policy change
Yep.
should be considered.
Yes.
The other ones you want in place.
Right, yes, agreed.
Yeah.
That's fair.
That's right. Okay. All right, Jim?
The skewing of the numbers.
You want
do that one?
skewing of numbers?
We have an idea about a recommendation motion we would make about skewing the numbers, if there should be a limit.
Come on.
I thought about this a lot on my beach walk, since I was the one that did the first one. I wasn't the first one, I will say, back when Tom and Val were on this committee, when the chamber came to them with asking for some money, they said yes, and we wanna give you $6,000 to fix your website. This website was, this was like 4 websites ago, it was horrible. And so, that's not exactly the same as doing the numbers, but what I'm worried about is I don't wanna suggest something so rigid that we lose flexibility, because part of it is being flexible to things that come up, like bandstand, electricity, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, Tom and Val and that committee that was put together said, yes, here's that money that you asked for, plus we wanna give you $6,000 to go fix your website. So, there was that time, and then.
So there's precedent for it.
Well, there's precedent for that. And then what I did was slightly different, which is I just wanted to show them I was so excited about the music festival that I rounded my number up and ended up giving them an extra $50. So I was just trying to be enthusiastic, not realizing I was starting something. But then I realized, well, if you take what I did to the end, somebody could come in and say, well, our budget is $290,000. I'm gonna vote no on everything else and give $290,000 to my pet project.
To the Coaster Theater.
Or to somebody who told me, put a bug in my ear and said, please vote for my thing. Which would radically screw the numbers.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, there's that, if you take it to the end, and then there's what I did, and there has to be something in the middle.
We actually have two issues. One of those issues, our fourth one, about raising issues to improve either the potential or the product,
Yeah.
could cover a desire to give someone more money than they asked for. And at the same time, we could limit any awards not to exceed 10% over a request,
Over what they asked for.
over what they asked for that item. And if we feel there's something they should be doing more, that could fit in our fourth category, raising issues to improve the potential of events or facilities in town. Because if we're gonna request that we have an option to identify potential improvements to the general environment for tourism in town, we could,
You're making an exemption for someone who wants to improve our product
yes.
versus, making improvements to an event.
No, I'm just adding a category that the committee could decide to make a recommendation for something, not that the applicant could.
I see, okay, gotcha.
And Jim,
I-
if I could just,
Yes.
so I'm clear on what you're talking about. I understood it to be that you could make a recommendation on something that does not involve 501c3.
Yes, but our discussion there would
The ban shall.
would probably be to identify a 501c3. No, that was the discussion.
Because that's separate from
Could-
other discussions.
From the funding,
Yes,
Right.
two separate questions.
Three
Yeah.
things.
okay.
I'll go off what Julie said. There's awards that come in, we have application for somebody wants $10,000 for Get Lit. We can say up to 10% in excess, we can vote,
Approve that.
we can approve that, up to 10% in excess of what was asked. That's the number Jim threw out, whatever, but that's one thing.
Yeah.
Number two is, we love your idea, here's the money for your event, and we're gonna give you $6,000 to fix your website. Because we think it's a good idea, and as part of our oversight and then being your board, to help you improve your product, we think you should do this. That's number two. And number three is, we as a group on our own said, hey, there's a project that we think we should do in town. The band shell or the, pick your favorite, infrastructure upgrade. So like, there's three things.
That's true.
The skewing thing is, if we set a number like that, that would prevent us from posing the numbers.
Yes.
From loading up one event.
Well, yeah, blowing one up and then,
Manipulating them.
yeah.
Right.
I see a real value in this, what happened like with the band shell.
Yeah.
But the problem with that is because your rules are so restrictive,
Mhm.
we happen to have funding someplace else because it was a good idea.
Parks, yeah.
But we never did use tax.
No,
money
No.
for
parks.
that.
Right.
So I'm
It
saying
got
that
done a different way.
yeah, so I'm saying that if I could see going in that direction, that you could recommend a project
Yep.
without tying it to a 501c3, but that would be something that would require a rule change.
Yes, and that's where what you just described.
Yeah.
So use your school, for example. During the, after it's bought and we start doing upgrades, we think, hey, it'd be a good idea to put a covered walkway or something. I don't know, there's some infrastructure, tourism upgrade that came from this committee.
Yeah.
It would be nice to be able to implement it with TAC funds.
But you could recommend.
Basketball
You could recommend you use your.
Yeah, basketball, hoop, whatever, right.
But there were three aspects in that, and the middle ground that you identified already linked it to a 501 because of the applicant being there.
Right, the one with Julie.
And it would just be us recommending another project for a 501.
Right.
As opposed to outside of
Two of
that.
them would fall under a 501. The 10% over the award, and
Yeah.
we think you need to do extra.
Even though there was no application for,
And then the third one would be something entirely outside of a 501
right.
association, something we think we should do. Basketball hoops for,
That's what would require the rule change.
that's the rule change, yeah. Because that would give us flexibility to do some of the things we've talked about.
Where is that
One.
rule again? Is it just the 501c3 rule?
So Julie, I was gonna say, when I wrote, there's really no section in the charter that has like awards. How will that be handled? Doesn't,
4A is where
does it really say that?
is where it talks about, must be, and to me, if there were,
4A.
if there was a, 4A1.
Dot one? Oh, here we go, yeah.
Said, internal city projects could, or TAC promoted projects could be used, or, something like
Yeah,
that.
something like,
And I,
There we will run, maybe Steve could give us an idea whether or not he thinks we would run into, state law, as that being usurping something other than a dedicated percentage. We might be in violation of state law.
Except for,
With that.
still, if it complies with something that has to do with tourism, like the band shell did, let's say the band shell, we didn't find the extra funding and we
Right.
were pushing it. But still, the whole point was to be able to improve our product
Right.
for tourism.
But the reason for establishing the 501c3s is so it wouldn't have to go through acquisition procedures of the city and that long, I mean, there was a reason for the 501s.
No, I know, I believe me.
No, that's,
Yeah.
We went back and forth on that, but in this case,
I
it
don't want that
was
complication.
internal city money and
Uh-huh.
our own people.
Parks and General Fund did it.
Yeah, so I guess the question, okay, sorry.
No, you're fine, but I think that if you were to recommend a project, like the band shell that you just talked about, that's it. I mean, we would go ahead and we would handle it at the staff level. It wouldn't change us needing to go out for bidding or anything like that.
Well, we,
But
oh.
are we making it too restrictive? Like, what if it was something that required something outside of city staff?
That we would still do it. It's, the only thing in my mind it would be changing is it gives you more flexibility on what you would use these funds for.
Right, so I was gonna say, to add to your comment, we wanna be able to use tax funds to do whatever we're recommending to the city that staff's gonna run and do.
So it's.
So the band shell, Bruce, like, we could've used tax dollars instead of general fund dollars.
Right.
That's all I'm getting.
Because of the lack of the 501c3.
That's why we did it the other way, okay. So, there's no way around that.
Are we correct in 4A is the rule that would need to be added to be able to make that kind of a recommendation? Determination, procedure, and application. 4A, you said it was, or somebody over there said it was. 4A is
Greg
the
did,
rule
4A.
that needs to change, or
Tax
be
and
added
determine.
to.
That needs to be,
Yeah, that would be modified.
Yep.
Probably, you keep it the same as far as the grant.
Yeah.
Yep.
That you're giving, but that you can also recommend, projects, city projects to be funded by tax.
yes, that city project be funded by tax. You got that, Jim? I'm not necessarily a note taker, but,
So that's the way to get where you're
Yeah.
talking.
That's what we're trying to do.
yeah, that's what we're trying to
I
do.
mean, it,
Just gives us flexibility.
So we would add essentially just that statement to 4A to be able to do something like the band shell.
Yeah.
Okay,
City projects using tax funds, TAF funds.
that seems like that allows us more flexibility to work on the product as it were.
absolutely.
Council's still approving, so it's, we're just making a recommendation, let's use this money for that.
If the funds can be used for else.
Yeah. Okay.
So regarding the skewing, would people like that number of 10%?
10%?
Or should we not do it, or should we?
Should just be what they asked for and that's it, or,
Capped with what they asked for.
I don't know. That's the discussion, should it be, Jim just threw out 10%, I don't know if that's, so if you ask for,
If you cap it to what they asked for, or the 10%, somebody can still mess with the numbers. If everybody voted to give no money, and somebody said 60,000, and what's what they asked for, you're still gonna give somebody 30,000 when you do that. Well, no, not, I guess it's the average.
the average,
Still,
yeah.
they still get some money, that's true.
Yep. Yeah, just caps, somewhere we cap it, so you
Yes,
can't,
it does cap it.
we want 10, well, one maybe 20, well, wait a minute, because that's what just happened, right?
That's exactly what just happened. Yes,
So,
so is it?
should it be the number, or should it be some percentage? Discussion? I'm okay with either one.
Yeah, initially I was like, yeah, 10% sounds fine. And then I'm trying to think of situations where, like, hey, here's 6,000, go fix your website too, kind of thing. Why would you give more than they asked? And I guess there would be some reasons that could come up.
I could see us seeing that they did not anticipate something that is a likely expense
That's
or a worthy project. And I'd hate to have only the option of denying the whole thing if we thought it was gonna compromise the outcome. Yes, sir.
Can I suggest that you can allow addendum requests? And so if I think.
That's already allowed.
It is allowed.
Well, but there are opportunities for additional application times outside of the deadlines.
You're suggesting amending an application, like,
Well, it could be that, or else if somebody could like, 'cause I was just going off of what Jim had said, that somebody didn't anticipate an expense to make something happen. So, I don't necessarily think it's when you have to go ahead and give them the money during the initial part. But just as somebody can, you know, if they have to do website work,
Well,
or they have to do some infrastructure.
Currently, the way we're currently working, the current rules we're under, if someone brought us a project and we thought, you need to put $3,000 more here for this because it's not gonna fly, I'm making that up, right?
Sure.
Can't they just amend it? Can we not amend those right now? Not amendable? Like on the fly in the moment? Is that a rule against that?
Not that I'm aware of.
I don't think there's a rule against it,
No.
Just never had it happen, I guess.
other than the website one, but that was so specific.
Yeah,
You know, that it was like, yes, for this money, plus your website stuff to go fix it.
yeah. But that's a good example of this, actually, I think. This is
It
what we're just now talking
I
about.
believe, I wasn't there at the time, but I believe it was unanimous. Like,
Okay.
everybody in the group was like, you need to fix the website.
Yeah, so there's no rule against us allowing someone to amend.
As long as we have the money to do it,
Right.
as long as it doesn't go over the budgeted amount, I don't know why anybody
So-
would say no to that.
Maybe maybe that scenario is already handled then,
Could be.
and we just have to agree on a cap, like what we're gonna,
I write these questions down for the attorney.
yeah.
So the question I just wrote is, can project applications be amended on the fly after discussion with the applicant?
I think it's probably true, but
She says yes.
we'll see what she
Yeah,
says.
It's a good question, it probably should be asked of the
And
attorney.
And if it's not addressed, you know, it sounds like you want it addressed.
Yeah,
But
nice to know.
I'm assuming, I'm sorry.
So we're gonna cap a number, Jim?
Would there be a motion to do that?
So how does that fit in with capping the number? That's the problem. So Gitlet comes and says, we only need $10,000, and we say, but, we think you need this, and she says, oh, yeah, I didn't think of that, okay, well, we're giving her $13,000 instead of 10.
I think the difference is that's a committee decision as opposed to an individual.
So it would have to be unanimous?
I guess, yeah, in this discussion, I would assume it'd be unanimous vote by the members. Okay, we'll let them amend up.
Does it have to be unanimous or consensus?
Consensus.
Consensus.
Yeah. Sorry, not unanimous.
Cumulative amount would be.
Majority, a consensus. That makes sense, right, Julie? And
That makes sense to me.
that way, the voting on the actual numbers stays straight.
Yes.
And if there's further discussion about addition, then that's a consensus vote.
So it's majority rules in that case, so you're not, I still I'm concerned about one person skewing the numbers too
Right.
much. But I think that
Don't you do that by averaging your
we
recommendations?
do, but
We-
you see, if you take it to the nth, it could be done
Oh, no, I know.
very badly.
Yeah.
I'm just
Really
doing
skew
on
it.
every case.
Yeah. So cap at what they ask for.
I think so.
Except in,
Unless we see,
unless,
or is it, in discussion, there's a
Right.
need for, I don't know how to say it, additional funds for something
Well,
missing or something.
Let's just kind of talk through. So using your example, Gitlet, they asked for $10,000. And you say 10,000, you say 10,000, you say 10,000, you say 10,000. And I say, I'm only funding Gitlet to $290,000.
Yep.
right.
And so what we would have done is we would have said, okay, the average is, right, and come up
Right.
with a number. And now we would say, okay, since there is one person that's going above the requested amount, we're gonna vote on the amount over the $10,000 ask? Is that what we're saying? I just wanna make sure I understand the mechanics.
That's a version of what we're saying, I think. It's versions of gray, Steve, so I think that's true, and also we could have it in discussion with the applicant. It might just be discovered that, the website it would really help you if you did these things,
Right,
and it's not $290,000, it's $6,000 or something, and we.
right, but I wanna take it to the extreme.
No, you're right.
We were talking about the end.
You're right,
Well, I guess
but,
I'm thinking is, you wouldn't be allowed to do that,
Right.
because we're not gonna give them, in this
So-
case, it was a cap of 10%.
We're gonna cap.
You couldn't give them any more.
You could do
than
$11,000.
you could do 11,
Right,
and then,
That's if there's a cap percentage, right? You could never give somebody more unless we said, but wait a second, you need $3,000 more to do your website or whatever.
right.
And then there would be consensus on
yeah,
that.
so the cap solves the problem.
290 wouldn't even be allowed to be in
No.
your budget.
Yep.
Because you can't guarantee anybody, or you can't vote for anything more than 10%,
With the-
or you can't vote for anything more than what they asked for.
though you could make the case to say, you know, I'm 10% over is what I want to kick in, but I want to raise the issue that it's still inadequate, make that case, and if everyone else was convinced of that point, we could take a consensus.
Yeah.
That's what I'm asking.
I think that's.
Yes.
I'm asking the mechanics of the process.
Does that sound like it would, because that seems like it would work.
So then where I was going with that is that to go over the amount, whatever we set as
Right?
the guideline, 10% over, whatever the requested amount is, to go over that would be a consensus vote? To allow that person to vote for that amount?
No vote would be needed if you kicked in 10% over and the rest of us
Gotcha.
are there.
Yep, yep.
Then it would be average,
Right, so if I said 11,000, it's good.
it's good,
But if I say 290,000, now what do we do?
We have a discussion about why.
yeah.
You can't do that unless, well, you have to pitch us,
Pitch it.
here's why I'm saying that.
Right?
Yeah,
And then if it was agreed, then we went, oh my God, we had no idea,
And then if it-
about 290 should be given to get this.
Then it's a consensus
Consensus
on
vote.
the amount over the 11,
Yeah.
yes.
over the 10%. Okay, that's all I'm asking is what,
No, I appreciate it, because taking it to the
Question.
nth degree is what you have to do
Right.
to make sure that
That's what'll happen.
you would have to convince us all that all 290 should be given to.
so
the
anything
rest.
above the cap, whatever it is, 10% or
Whatever,
The number.
right?
recommended or requested amount would have to receive a consensus.
Consensus after discussion, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
And then the question
fine
still
with it.
is, do we want to say only what's asked for, or do we want to say 10%, which gives everybody a little bit of wiggle room?
I like the 10%.
I do too. That gives everybody a little wiggle room.
Because
There's some flexibility.
it does.
So Jim, Bruce is,
But we have,
Okay.
the 10% above still has to maintain, it has to fall in the budgeted amount.
Right,
yes.
right, yes.
Okay, Bruce?
My recommendation is that, you limit to whatever the request is,
Mhm.
and then anything, no 10%, then that, well, you can change it, well, everybody expects 10% or more, so I don't know. But to make it for what they asked for,
Okay,
but that you can adjust the number up, and be it by, majority vote, the
Yep.
supermajority.
Yep.
But then you're just saying, you're only talking about how much is, is the increase as opposed to the increase minus 10%, which is kind of a given.
Yeah.
so that's cleaner.
I like, that's much cleaner.
Okay.
Thank you, Bruce.
Good point.
I like that.
So we eliminate the percentage thing and limit the individual committee
To the ask.
recommendations to the ask with the opportunity to argue for a consensus on a larger grant.
And I think it'd be more than consensus, it would have to be a majority vote or a
Yeah.
supermajority.
Yeah, so what do you,
Just consensus is you all kind of nodding your heads.
Right.
Okay.
no,
we need
majority vote.
If,
Because
yeah, if you're going more than
I think-
what they're asking for, I think everybody needs to raise their hand.
I think supermajority might be too restrictive, but
Yeah, I think a majority.
majority's
I
probably,
think a majority.
you can get 4 out of 7 say yes.
Yeah, I think that seems fair.
Okay,
So that's a rule change for our own committee.
yes,
I mean, the city council still has to say yes to that.
right.
Okay.
So recommended rule change for us. Good.
Okay.
My guess is they're gonna
No.
expect that that's already been
Exactly.
ruled.
There's probably, yeah.
Process down there.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. But it's, I like getting this stuff down because the
Too.
logic will be set in the record
It's good.
for future,
Yeah, exactly, not just for us.
as the reasoning of, how we got to the point where we're at
Gaming,
30 years ago.
It's gonna-
Right, nobody's gaming.
okay?
One of my worries about giving any committee a ton of power is that it might change the motivation of people who want to get on the committee,
Exactly.
That's true.
wield it, hence my concern over we're not elected. So, can we just write that as a recommendation, or do we need a motion to make that recommendation to council for them to vote on?
I'm sure that Jen is tracking these, and I'm trying to track them too. I think at the end, what we do is we read them, and you make a motion to recommend to the council those and recommendations.
Okay. Okay,
At the end, when we're done with all of our stuff.
yeah, that's good.
Okay.
Okay, there was one other issue that was raised, which was removal of members. there are guidelines to do that. Are we,
What's an approved excuse, is what I want to know.
what's an approved excuse?
Doesn't say, right?
And what's the procedure? Is that something we should set internally as a committee? Regardless of how, council would feel about it? Is that something that needs their attention, or?
It's in here.
It's in here, yeah, the three
Charter.
unexcused. What's not in there is the definition of approved and, the procedure for actually getting.
In my experience, the approved is, I'm not gonna be able to make it because I have a doctor's appointment. And, you know, so that's understandable, so that's an approved. If I never said anything and I missed 8 meetings, then none of them were approved.
Right, because you made no
So you make,
unannounced,
to get it approved, you make a request.
right.
You say, I can't be at this meeting because of it.
We have some restricted communication between committee members. It's not allowed, so a lot of our communications would have to go through the city to be on record.
Yeah.
So that to me implies that, you know, being, not required to be at the meeting would have to go through the city. It would have to be approved.
No, if I can't make it, I'm not gonna be here,
Sure,
okay? But I can, what I would recommend, I'll use Greg as an example. Greg can't make it.
sure,
He's not gonna decide to go whether or not based on me or Jen. What he would do is send an email to me.
to the city,
To the city.
yeah.
And then we would send it, and y'all would vote on it at the meeting. Greg wouldn't be here,
Yeah.
but.
It was an approved absence or not?
He said he had a doctor's appointment, and somebody makes a motion, and that's
Okay.
excused absence.
So today, as an example, Jennifer has not heard from Mike.
Right.
Is that not, it's not an approved
Not-
excuse?
Unapproved, and that was the case the last meeting,
So
How
who-
many times have we not been here without saying?
at least twice.
I don't know, we can.
We haven't been tracking it because we didn't realize that it was an issue.
But you can track it based on minutes.
But we know for sure the last two.
Well, wait, how do we track it based on minutes?
If he was here or
Absent.
not.
Yes, if he was here.
Right, and then whether or not he asked for permission to not be here.
Right, and so what we don't know, because we don't have Colleen to tell us, did he say, not gonna be able to make it? Not gonna be able to make it. Essentially, he's working, and he hasn't made several meetings, we don't know if he's asked to not be here.
We can check to see if Mike had sent anything to Colleen.
Okay.
We can check the emails, but I believe that Colleen would have brought it to you to ask, because we can't give permission. And it's in here that somebody can be eliminated, so I don't want us to get permission.
Right, absolutely.
right.
So whether somebody comes or not is up to them, whether you excuse it is up to you.
Okay,
There you go.
so we've been not paying attention to this, and maybe what we do is from today forward, pay attention to it.
Well, maybe, but he wasn't here last meeting either, Julie. We just came up the last
Right,
meeting.
but I don't know if he said to Colleen, he's not gonna be here.
But Jen was taking notes last meeting.
He didn't email me before the last one.
We don't, last
This
meeting,
is the last.
that's two, yeah.
And I'll double check my email when I get
Okay.
back, and make sure I didn't have any.
Okay,
If he doesn't wanna do it, he doesn't wanna do it. That's cool.
well, I know.
Well, somebody wants to do it.
He wants to be here.
I know, if you want someone who wants to do it, that's all.
Wants to be here for funding.
He likes for the funding part, right?
So, but the rest of the work.
But this is where the work is done.
That's right, that's right.
So Jennifer, you would check the last two, then
Please.
we need to start paying attention to this for every meeting. We've
Yep.
been all very lax about it, so, and including me, who did not come from the previous meeting. So I am one of the bad ones that didn't say anything, and then, okay.
So I think it needs to be clarified, and communicated that don't let the chair of the committee know. We let the city know,
Yes,
because
because we
I,
are restricted in our.
Email Jennifer.
right, we can't communicate to all of each other.
Right.
But let's say I wasn't coming to today's meeting for some reason, I would have just sent Jim a message and said, Jim, I can't make it to today's meeting.
Right.
Sure.
So and so. That wouldn't have been communicated properly, that'd have been improper communication, although my guess is I would have assumed I would have been following this because the committee was aware.
Right,
So I think we would need to just clarify the communication method and
Bruce, do you think it makes sense that either you or Jennifer send an email out to this committee saying, if you're not going to attend the meeting, you must let Jennifer, me, whatever the process is, know, or it will be an inexcused absence, 3 of which are allowed, just to make sure that Mike is on record.
And we can do that,
Notice.
but I would ask that you direct us to do that. So it's not something that we came up with.
That makes sense.
And also, I think that, to Steve's point, I think that, we're informal enough that if somebody made a mistake and you saw Jim and you said something.
I'm not gonna be there on Monday.
Jim said, no,
Huh?
he told me he wasn't gonna be able to make it.
Right.
I don't think that we should
Right.
go ahead
And make it.
Penalize.
something because somebody didn't follow procedure.
Right.
That makes sense.
That's fair, I just wanna make sure that we
That's fair.
know what the process is, and,
I think we should direct the city to communicate that.
Is everybody okay with that?
That's my opinion.
So I will say,
Be clear.
again, taking it to the end, because some people seem to wanna do that. All of his excuses, he could say, as long as he emails, I'm not gonna make it to the meeting, I'm not gonna make it to the meeting, I'm not gonna make it to the meeting.
Right.
right,
And then just come for funding, and that would still be okay according to this rule.
He has to give a reason.
The reason is he's got a job.
Well, I mean, if he says he's gotta work or something like
Yeah.
that, but it's just, I'm not coming, that's not something you can act on. So, I have a doctor's appointment, I've got another job that day, but, and again, it's a standard that you all wanna hold yourselves to.
Mhm.
I would, if you all are willing to say, I can't come because of the doctor, I can't come because I'm in the middle of a project, personal project, then you can hold, everybody else to that standard. If you don't wanna say why you can't do it, then you really can't hold anybody else to it, and you kinda don't have any teeth.
However, that's not the only reason that a member can be removed from the committee.
That's right.
There's misconduct or malpractice, or just, is there a failure, non-performance of duty?
The first sentence doesn't say anything about 3 meetings, it just says you can be removed for misconduct or non-performance. So I guess if the committee decided this person's non-performant, you could vote and recommend to council they be removed. They can vote, council has to, council. You'd recommend to council.
I think our directive to the city to remind of the requirements of the committee should include that non-performance is, consideration, for removal. If members can be removed for non-performance. And that would, cover all of the, I gotta work, can't make it.
Maybe this committee's not for you.
And I think a committee vote might declare non-performance.
As a recommendation, the way, I just wrote, direct me staff to remind members that removal can happen for non-performance, but I would say, and this includes, attendance.
Yes.
Because attendance is covered someplace else, but because people aren't here, you can define that as performance. So I would just extend that sentence to say this includes attendance.
And I would cite the section in the code.
Yeah.
Is everybody else okay with that?
I'm
Yeah.
okay with that.
We need people who are gonna show up and help.
So we all have busy schedules, right? We all go out of town, well, we used to all go out of town. And so,
Oh, those are the days.
things just happen when we can't get to a meeting, and
Sometimes you're at your doctor's office.
Sometimes-
And being told you're about to
sometimes-
go into surgery.
Sometimes.
right, so at that point, okay, maybe you have one unexcused absence, right? Because you didn't communicate, but you shouldn't have 3.
Yeah.
You shouldn't have 3.
Three's
You can
egregious.
be excused after the fact. I mean, in that instance, we're not.
I was hit by a car, I didn't have a chance to.
I couldn't call,
Yeah.
couldn't call Jennifer.
So, I just think that it makes perfect sense. We need people to be here.
Yeah.
The people on the committee, because they asked the city to appoint them to this committee.
They did.
And if they're not gonna be here to participate, first of all, I don't think the city council would want them to be on the committee if they're not here participating. Because there's somebody else that wants to be on this committee. I know because, when I was up for renewing my position, there was another candidate who was interested. So we have people that wanna sit on this committee, and if somebody's not participating, they're wasting the spot from that other person.
Yep. Good. Okay, so where do we stand? Do we wanna go over again the recommendations and, vote on anything that needs a vote and just, plug the other recommendations in if we don't think they require a vote?
I think there's one thing, yeah, we talked about, can applications be amended on the fly, and as part of that discussion, the award should be limited when you vote to however much is awarded, or is requested. But as a result of discussion, you can increase that award.
Yep.
Maybe I missed it, but I didn't pick up that, Steve's example of saying 292,000 versus the 10,000 all the way around. Should there be a limit as far as what, because you have kind of a unique way to say that this is how much it's gonna be. Because now by consensus, it's by how much, with the average of what you all say, that, do you want to have, the allowance that somebody can gain the system, or do you wanna say that if they only ask for 10, you can't recommend more than 10, you can recommend 8 or 0? But do you wanna hold that so that somebody can't make a number to skew it?
Yeah,
I thought
that's what we,
your recommendation was, cannot recommend more than in this case, 10,000,
Correct.
unless you're gonna say, but let me say, I think they need another 5, not 290, because that kind of makes it ridiculous, but what if somebody comes in and says, they should get another 5, and here's why, and then pitch everybody, and then we take a vote.
majority of
I
wins.
think it's anything over the requested amount
Has to
gets
be-
voted on, and it has to be a majority.
Requires a majority.
And it's
Yep.
up or down on that,
Right,
right? It's
yeah.
not like, well, they wanted 5, but I think we should give them, or we think we should give them 3,500, well, we wanna give them 2,500, and you wanna give them, it's either
Yeah,
up or down on that.
Up or down, majority rules. Does that make sense, Bruce?
Well, I might be splitting hairs, as I always do, but I think that there's two things. One is saying that if we as an organization ask for 10,000, then, it's limited to 10,000 unless you guys discuss it. If I ask for 10,000, and each one of you recommends 2, and Steve recommends 20, then that could potentially just get it up to the limit.
But Steve can't
No,
recommend 20.
Nope.
He can only give 10.
I'm saying the way that I've written that.
Oh, I see
Ah.
what you're saying.
Oh, yeah.
It's almost like they need to be two different things.
Yeah.
Because one is how much can be awarded, and the other one is how much I can recommend
So,
individually.
one, what can be awarded is up to
10.
the requested amount by the applicant. That's that issue.
Yes.
So, but.
Second issue is, if there's an amendment, that can be
Yeah,
No.
I can skew that.
I see what you're saying.
No.
Because the applicant asked for 10, and it's one of my favorite applicants, and maybe y'all recommended 1.
Yep.
So that the recommendation's gonna be 1,000, except I recommended 50,000,
And
and so that gets it up to 10.
but you
I
can't,
think our intent was to limit the individual inputs to the amount
not
I
requested.
see what you're saying.
But they're two different issues,
Yep,
that's all
I
I'm saying.
totally see.
Yeah.
what you're saying.
Well,
They are.
so let's say it's 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, and Jennifer says 10, because that's all she can, right? Up to, so that's, the average is, whatever, it's $6,000 or something?
But Jennifer can't go up to.
Can't go above 10.
She can't go to 11,
Right.
unless she pitches,
That's what needs to be in the
and then we
But
all,
what Bruce is saying is, but that gets them up to,
6.
well, he can't,
So
she
to the 10,
can't.
you can't go over the 10, but you
Right.
all recommended 1. And what
I
it
see
is,
what
is
you're
that
saying.
we don't have anything in here that says, I can't skew things by recommending a number that's over the total. We agreed that you're not gonna go more than what I requested.
Yeah.
But if it was a very low number, and one person comes up with a high number, which I understood had happened in the past,
Yep,
then I can go ahead and skew it as long as it doesn't go over that top.
and they
Right.
still get their 10 grand.
well, I think
They won't.
no individual committee member can go above the recommended amount unless
Right.
they make an appeal to the rest of the committee, and then the vote is majority.
Which is fine, but what his point is, if we are all 0 or 1, and somebody else says 10, that might get them $8,000, which is sort of against what the consensus is.
No,
That's still okay.
No, it's like what you said now. What I'm saying is that the limit is 10.
Yeah,
But, and so if I recommend 10, I'm still within, you know,
Yeah.
the rules.
Yep.
Sure.
If I recommend 20,
20.
they
The
didn't
average
ask for
takes
20,
them up
but if
to
I
20.
say 20,
Yeah.
I'm gonna skew your ones and
Right,
zeros.
and I think that's where we
But-
put in the no committee member can award more than the recommended,
But if-
requested amount.
And that's just another what I'm saying, that's a different recommendation
I gotcha.
that the team up with.
I see what you're saying, yeah.
In his example, though, if he wants to say 20, then we have to have a discussion and come to consensus or a majority vote on it. If you really did want to say
Correct.
20, then you have to pitch it to the 7 members and explain why.
And then it's up or down,
Then
no,
it's-
and the only thing he can do is
Then it's up or
say-
down.
Then it's up or down.
Yeah, I think I'm sorry, the way, again, I personally like the fact that when you're in the discussion, that's when you can pitch it, that's when I can request it,
Mhm.
and then that's the time. But not to go ahead and have it go through,
Yes,
not have anything set, and then go ahead and skew it
yes.
by putting in 30, 40, 50.
Right.
And then have the number come up higher.
So in other words, if we did then discuss it, so if someone's put in 20 for 10, we're at whatever, doesn't matter what the rest of the committee says, we discuss it, why would you recommend another 10, and somebody pitches it, and then it's up or down vote, and if it's no, then that person has to go to 10,000.
That's their max.
That's the max. Okay, that's correct, that's how everybody understands that?
That's what I think, yeah.
That makes sense.
I think so. Jim, were you understanding that?
I think it gets us the same place.
But it's two different conditions, in my mind,
It is two different conditions, I get it.
So we gotta be clear to council, because everything needs to be crystal clear for council.
We're trying to prevent gaming.
Trying to prevent gaming, right, which we've seen plenty of.
Greg.
Yep, it's me.
He's such a gamer.
I'm a gamer.
I didn't say which Greg.
No, you
Yeah,
didn't.
that's right. Good
Swedenborg,
point.
the hotel guy,
Darn hotel guy.
our hotel guy.
Okay,
Do you have an applicant for our open position? Or has it been noted yet?
There is one person that has indicated an interest.
Good.
Oh,
Good.
who is it? Can you say?
Yeah, it's the gentleman that has Bahama boards and Bahama.
Oh, good.
And he's, I mean, just nothing to do with this, but, my working with him has been amazing. We needed help in, getting the wheelchairs out, so we asked if he would help, because he's on the other side of the street and all that kind of stuff. It took 30 seconds for him to say yes. And then he went on to talk about the programs that he's involved with down south of here for, I forgot what it is, but essentially it's surfers that, are not totally mobile, like, wounded veterans, that kind of thing. And we've been talking to him about setting up that same program down at Tolovana. And he charges us nothing, he does all the work on the wheelchairs, and is considering buying
Wow.
or building new wheelchairs. So, I mean, as far as, you know, the kind of person you want around, and totally separate from this, he has been, you know, an excellent person to work with from the city standpoint.
Great.
Great.
Yeah.
okay,
The general,
yes.
so this is something that's bugged me since, I want to first preface this by saying I'm not a heartless jerk. I care about businesses, I care about our businesses in town, et cetera. I just want to be sure everybody understands that. So in section 5, under C, talks about monies collected in excess of the amount budgeted shall be held in reserve, which is great, which we had, right? And it may be used to provide a fund surplus, or cover any future shortfall, or support shortfall of the transient lodging tax, or support such additional activities and programs recommended by the tax. It doesn't say there, this is what bothers me, Bruce, that the council can raid the fund and create a grant program for the downtown businesses to survive a event. It just bothers me that and it's probably my own fault, the way I heard about it was sitting in here after it already happened. So I didn't hear like the council say, we'd like to meet with TAP and talk about using your reserve to fund a business grant program. They just did it, at least from my perspective. And it bugs me that it doesn't say they can just do that.
Well,
So-
we did.
Okay, so that's probably my fault, that's right.
No, but at the time, we wanted to make things be happen. And it was going to be the start of having to shut things down and all that. And if I recall, the action was based on their ability to allocate, the funds. So even if the council was to give the funds to TAC, it was like, well, we're gonna assign those funds.
That's an important point, okay.
Yeah.
So if it's before it actually got awarded to TAC.
Yes, yeah. Because there was a question about whether or not, two questions about whether we could use them. One is access to them once they'd already been granted the TAC, and the other was, it didn't meet the pure definition of, of tourism, but the council took the position that, what we're doing is using these funds so that we have businesses at the other side, and if somebody wants to come at us, come at us.
Again, I'm a supporter of that, it's just,
Yeah,
the way, the process was,
That's what it was,
because
it was just happening fast,
while we were saving the money, Bruce, we were having discussions before we were talking about these changes to our rules about how, wouldn't it be great if we could use money to deposit on the school, or we could use, we had thoughts about that money, and then all of a sudden we're worried about how to pay the people that we promised money to, so.
What do you mean prior to allocation to TAC? Because those reserves were set up in prior years.
I wasn't gonna say
I
that.
don't know, I don't recall if it was the budget process or what occurred, as far as the council, I believe, has the ability to make those kind of budgetary decisions. But that was a decision, that we made, and that was the reason that we made it. And it was the only funds, they were the only funds that were available to try to go ahead and provide some business relief. And so, and also, actually, I think that they gave, additional budgetary authority even to me to make those kind of things happen, as far as the emergency declaration.
Thank you.
I don't think you're totally heartless, because I've never viewed our job here as preserving business for any individual in my business and
Our charter, no. Anyway.
And then, what they did is they took it because they think it's theirs.
Sure.
I understand, no,
Their decision.
that's what I'm taking issue with, because it doesn't really say that it's theirs, but maybe somewhere it does, in the budget documents, I don't know.
Heartless bastard.
Yeah, heartless.
Okay, so can we enumerate the recommendations from minutes as to where we're at?
Jen, you want to take the first shot?
Jennifer.
Okay, so with number one, the committee was in agreement, wait, let me think, number two. So the committee was in agreement that they'd like to see the chamber president, Jim, and other staff person come and present to the committee as opposed to just the council. But we also discussed that this isn't something that's just gonna move forward right away and go into the next meeting on Tuesday. So there's really not a recommendation at this time, is that correct? Or are we making that recommendation to council on the work session?
I saw that as a subset of the discussion, and I think that the discussion, and correct me if I'm wrong, Greg, was that this committee, have some oversight over how all TLT funds are spent. Yeah, so that's a subset of a way to go ahead and handle one of the 70%.
Okay, so are we recommending that now to council
Yes, well, I think
Yeah, I think so.
you want to
at the
recommend.
work session?
Recognizing that it's probably not gonna be something that happens immediately.
Right.
Yes,
To get them to think about
Yeah.
they can choose to act or not act.
Get it on their plate.
But that's in relationship to the DMO funding.
What she specifically said was the DMO funding, but it's
Right.
larger than that.
We wanna go up one step.
All three streams.
All three streams.
So that maybe someday future streams.
Planting a seed there, Jennifer.
Well, that'll be future.
That we need
Oh, yeah.
to start talking about
I
that.
was trying to highlight things
There's never
as you were
fewer.
talking.
No, you did fine. define that.
Okay.
You were right, we started with water, and then
Yes.
it kind of got down to when there's only really one to deal with.
Really,
And
Right.
so that's where it came, but the original recommendation is oversight.
Right.
Oversight
10,000 foot is.
on the 3%,
oversight over
the
all
current 3%.
three,
Right,
currently maybe future.
revenue streams.
Really is for
TLC
that one.
revenue.
All
All
TLT,
TLT.
Okay, so I would have for number one, to have oversight of the 1% and future 1%,
Yep,
You just say all TLT,
CLT.
all TLT revenue.
oversight of
trenchant,
all restricted TLT.
room tax.
There it is, Jennifer, that's it right there, all restricted TLT.
TLT fund.
Yep.
And
Yeah, the
then
restricted.
subset to that, we have the chamber board restricted TLT funds. And then that we would want the chamber to present to the committee, and then the committee makes recommendations to the council.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Specific to the DMO 1%, we wouldn't like that, yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna put D.
Or we think it makes sense, I think the city council might appreciate that.
Okay, so that would be for number one. And then for number two, committee agreed to revise 4A to include city tourism improvements. So that would be on
Yeah, what
the
was
task for, the guidelines for task art
4A.
signage is page 2.
I would extend that, Jen,
I thought that
to
was
say
4.
without 501c3
Right.
applicant.
That's 4A, correct?
4A, yeah, that's where Greg said, yeah,
That's what we talked about.
where it says a recipient must be. This will be a,
Or, so we say a recipient organization must be a 501c3, 501c6, or the city. I don't know how you say that. Or other nonprofit entity like the city.
because they're still not,
Not-for-profit.
I would make it, I would.
Separate
give it to the city, not like the city, because that could be, you could give it to
Yeah,
any.
no.
Yeah,
For instance, the city is what I kind of meant, like, oh yes, the 501c3 or the city itself. I'm just looking at the wording, I'm just trying to change the wording on 4A. He's the lawyer.
I'm thinking Bruce should come up with the language.
Okay.
for
thank
that.
you, because I was just gonna suggest, let me work on it with
yeah.
Ashley.
I was gonna say, Ashley might wanna weigh in on,
Because
yep,
we might wanna have an A and a B.
yep, that's right,
Therefore-
that's what I think, you need both.
Yeah.
Because one's specific to the actual applicants, and the other one's additional functions,
Additional authority.
additional authorities, yeah, yeah.
Okay, so then in addition to, in the number 2 section, we also will have award recommendations limited to the requested amount and the maximum. You can adjust the number, but only by a majority vote of the committee. I mean, it's not exactly worded correctly, but that's the gist of it.
Yes, that was the gist of it.
Let me just suggest my language. Project applications can be amended, I'm using the word on the fly, after discussion with the applicant. Awards would be limited to
To the amount
the
requested.
discussion at the award presentation reveals additional funding might improve the situation. So,
If, subject to a majority vote by the
yeah,
council, or the committee.
Jen and I'll work on it.
Okay.
Get Bruce's language.
Get Bruce's language.
Jen's favorite is discussion ensues.
Okay, and then on the last one, the committee suggested sending an email, having the staff send an email that non-performance is considered official removal from the committee, and this includes attendance. So basically, we're gonna just, and include portion of the code. We're just gonna send an email just to remind everyone, our code says this, and
Yeah, for clarity, please review 2.23.07. Yeah.
and that's something that we're gonna just send an email on
Mhm.
at this time, not sending this to council.
We're gonna start tracking.
Do we want to say anything in that email regarding what it approved, or when it approved use is? Okay, all right,
So that it's clear that there is a procedure.
okay, good.
Good.
All right.
I like that.
And you wanna make it say, so that we don't become so bureaucratic, that if you let either the staff or another board and that commission member know, they'll be there and why.
Yeah,
You're supposed to say.
I'm okay with
that's
that.
fine, yeah. Sometimes Julie's is the only number I have. I just called Julie.
Well, one thing I'll ask is that, like, Greg, calls Greg,
Yeah.
That Greg, you would let us know
Right.
that you had had the conversation or something. And what we'll do is we'll just put it on as an action item, approval.
In the minutes, yeah.
And so you guys know, just for information, on my other committees that we do, people typically email me, and I forward it to the chair the second I get it. So the chair goes into the meeting knowing that someone's gonna be absent. And then when we start the meeting, they usually will say, oh, so-and-so's out today.
Yeah.
And,
That's the best way to do it.
yeah, and it seems to work.
Everything goes to Jen.
If somebody goes, nothing.
That's
Yeah.
that could be a recommended channel, just not set in stone, in
Recommend.
case somebody ends up with another channel. If I'm not at a computer terminal, which is almost my entire life,
Always.
Yeah.
I'd love to have a, a back channel.
And that
to get
happens as well, where they'll say, oh, they didn't, so-and-so wasn't able to email you, but they told me they're not gonna be there, and then we always talk about it at the beginning.
Sure.
I guess we're not gonna get hung up on the procedure. You're not gonna get busted for not following the procedure.
Is Mike going to get any correspondence on this?
That's coming from.
That's coming from the city. We have,
Yeah,
we're all, yeah.
Reminder.
So we have those ones for the recommendations for the council meeting that is gonna go to the work session, and then we'll the staff will send an email out to all committee members regarding that municipal code section, and including what counts as the procedure for an approved excused absence, which is you let staff and or board member know that you are unable to attend and why.
What is this, they let us know. I have one more, was the one I brought up last, is at the time of voting on the award, no member can recommend a value higher than what was requested by the applicant. That's the thing, and then, I started to extend it out to go into where you have a discussion earlier, but I think that as long as we say it's at the time of voting on the award,
Yep.
that other should have happened already.
Right.
I see.
I agree.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yep.
That makes sense.
That's clear.
Okay. All right, and, if you give us a couple of days to, finalize these, if it's okay with you, we take the chair. And then if you know it's head, then that's what we'll send to the council, and we'll send you copies of it also.
I like it. Good. Thank you, Jim.
Okay. You can extract your revenge later if I screw it up.
You won't screw it up, Jim.
And so that meeting is that next week, I'll make sure that I'm there.
11?
Yeah, 11th, 5:30?
So is that a meeting, are we all required to be there, or is it just the chairs, or what's the expectation?
I don't know. Jim?
If it,
Is it a normal city council meeting?
it is, but we're gonna make it a joint meeting in case all of you want to talk about it. But if you don't do that, so if you don't have to go, and just the chair goes to represent, then it's just a regular.
I'd like anybody with second thoughts or additional input to be able to
I'd like to be there.
make a public statement at that time.
Then let us make it a joint meeting so that you're covered, if two of you or three of you talk.
Can we make it a joint?
The
So
11th?
is the expectation that we're all going to be there?
Yes, excuses will be entertained.
Jennifer, is that the
I'm
11th?
guessing Stephen doesn't.
5:30?
No, I just wanna know,
Oh, okay.
because if somebody is not there,
Yep,
is that a missed third?
That's a missed meeting.
it'll count,
Unless you let us know you can't, why.
yeah, yeah.
I'm not speaking
No,
of myself in that hypothetical.
It's,
I'm just wondering if the expectation is that's a TAC meeting.
I think we should go along with the stuff outlined in here. It is defined as joint meeting, and the October 20th to be determined thing.
I agree.
I think we all received this, and I think we should take that as our, schedule of what's expected.
The reason I kind of hesitated a little bit is, if it's a joint meeting, I don't know if three of you have to be there for anybody to talk. Because I don't know if the chair can talk at a joint meeting if there's not a quorum, if we said it was a joint meeting.
I see.
So, as long as you think three of you are gonna be, now nobody's gonna say anything,
I'll be there, Jim.
but.
Our quorum is four,
Four right now.
even though we have only 6 current active.
Oh, that's right. How does that
Members.
work when there's only, 6 active members?
Quorum's still 4 and 6.
Quorum's still 4.
Okay.
Half plus one, yeah, so.
have to have 4 people there.
So
That's your quorum, yeah.
I'll be there,
I'll be there.
So Julie and I'll be there. There you go.
Then we've got it.
We'll have 4.
I should be there.
Are we confident? Okay,
Confident.
let's stick it as joint meeting.
That'll be fun. Get the skin in the game.
That feels good that we've had to have this meeting.
So,
Finally.
I think we,
For the last
ha-
year.
is there any other business to cover at this meeting?
I'll get you the, final numbers as soon as we have them.
Thank
Once
you.
everybody's paid in.
I'm glad to hear there's some expectation of that quarter being
That's
paid. Thank you for raising that.
good.
And, Rick, it sounds like everybody's doing relatively well in the first quarter for us.
Yes, everybody I've talked to is busy.
Yeah. So,
How does it compare to last year? I'm just curious.
Okay,
We were up 5% over last year.
Jeez.
And last year sucked, so
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
not even
okay.
you were up.
Even in the pandemic.
Last year was our busiest July ever,
What? Oh, what's
and
wrong?
this is our busiest July ever this year,
Wow.
for our hotel.
Right.
Yeah, but how many bike racks do you have?
okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Actually, I texted you.
I'm officially
I don't know.
calling this meeting to a close.
Thank you, Jen.
We are
Thank you, Jennifer.
I texted you a picture last week,
Thanks, Bruce.
just Land Rover.
Yeah.
And
Oh, yeah, I
four-
did get that.
Yeah,
Yeah.